Okay, we are live, Leondray. It finally, oh my goodness. Okay, so if anybody out there was waiting, we had a technical difficulty that took us almost half an hour to figure out what was going on. But we are here. Not the most ideal lighting or anything, but we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it happen. And I'm so excited to have my special guest here today, my brother, Mr. Leondray Gholston. Thank you for being so patient. This is a really important conversation to have, especially with everything that's going on politically.
Indeed.
You know, we had a chance to talk a little bit about our topic today, things they call us. But before we get too far in the conversation, I just want to share with everybody a little bit about your bio. So you are currently a systems engineer and you are an author and you were a former Navy, you're a Navy veteran. So thank you so much for your service to our military.
Pleasure, thank you.
But how I originally met you is because you are the past vice chair of the Colorado GOP, and that is no small feat. And so thank you for being a public servant in that arena and leading in areas that you are very passionate about.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, we talk all the time, but to be able to share with a wider audience is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm so excited for people to get to know you and your mind. And we've had so many conversations. And every time I talk to you about our history and current affairs, you are so intelligent and insightful. And so we are just going to get started. Okay. My first question to you is, what does it mean to be a conservative or a Republican?
I'm glad you asked the question that way, conservative or Republican, because those two terms are not always mutually inclusive. The Republican is someone who has a particular view on government, that government does best when it does the least, that personal liberties come first, and that each level of government, the several governments, whether federal or state, county or city, or your water district or library area, each government has a set of duties that it has to perform, and it should not transgress them. That's why Republicans fight over things like healthcare, because you ask the question, where is the statutory authority for the government to be doing this? That's the first question that raises the hair on the Republican's neck. Now, conservatives believe this, but it's a little bit further. Conservatives generally are tied to values as well. Not only shall the government itself not transgress the lines and the rules and the boundaries, but it's expected of individual citizens to have self-restraint. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something when you're a conservative. You want to play by the rules. You want everybody to play by the same rules. And you want to make sure that those rules are just. That's the underpinning of conservatism. And that's where it is to be a conservative and a Republican. That's really what it means. Is I want the smallest government possible. I want the most liberty. I want to be left alone. And I want to show, as our founders well knew, that mankind has a capacity for self-governance.
So
that's where we are.
Have you always been a conservative / Republican? Tell me more about why you personally are a conservative.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was raised to be a conservative Republican by liberal Black Democratic women, my mother and grandmothers. Everything they taught me turned out to be conservative, even though we were, as Black people, we were surely taught that we were Democrats. It was my mother and grandmothers that taught me about self-determination, about not making excuses, not taking less than I should have or I needed for my family, about fair play, about rules, simple things like be at home when that street light comes on. Just a rule. The earth isn't going to end if I'm 5 minutes late. I would feel that way with my mother and grandmothers, but simple things like that. I was raised that way without knowing it. And when I was 18, I registered as an independent. I didn't know really anything about the practical ways of politics and how the rules turn. And what I found that as I used my mother's and my grandmother's advice in voting and analyzing people and candidates and things and what I thought and how I felt, and I had a family of my own, I noticed that I really wasn't voting for Democrats or liberals at all. And it was a shock to me because clearly I was a registered independent, but I'm Black, so I couldn't be a Republican, right? But everything I was taught as a child pointed me to this direction and brought me here and keeps me here. It is the advice of my mother and grandmothers that really keeps me grounded in conservatism. That's how I got here.
So did your mom and grandma ever, change parties? Did you ever have this conversation with them about why you vote the way you vote?
Yes and no. My grandmother, especially one, my father's mother, God rest them, they both my grandmothers have gone on to glory. But we used to have the most interesting arguments before she died, in so much as one can argue with a country granny. She believed she was a Democrat to the day she died, and believed she hated Republicans, but everything she complained about was on the Republican Party platform. And I gently explained this to her, and she would say, "Baby, I don't know about that." And that would sort of be the end of it. But everything that she wanted, and she was a closet adorer of Ronald Reagan, everything she wanted was in the Republican platform, and didn't know it. So it was just a quite interesting thing. I could never convince her that what she wanted and what she was saying was Republican, and that's fine because this is America and that's okay. But I always just wish we had another, I don't know, few years just so she could see a little bit more.
So would you call yourself at that time a closet Republican, or were you
No.
okay with sharing?
No, I was a didn't know Republican. What I knew was, as a Black man, there's no way you could be a Republican. I knew that much about the Republican Party. And I just went with that, kind of like many people do. It took me about 10 years, the time from I was about 18 to 27, really getting out of the Navy, to say, you know what? I am a Republican. Everybody I vote for is Republican. Everything that I'm talking about, the Republicans are talking about. Let me go see what this is. And that's where it happened for me. But no, my relatives have not changed parties. I won't out any of them, but a great many of them do vote for Republicans over and over again as independents and Democrats to this day.
So when the shackles came off, you went even a step further and decided that you were going to run for state office. And as on the, I mean, like you crazy, right? You're like, this has got to be the craziest thing that I've done. It's like, tell me about what prompted you to run for state vice chair.
Before that, I was in the Colorado Black Republican Forum. I had served a term as president, served a term as vice president. I was helping with local campaigns, and I was complaining. I was young, television and things of that nature. And my wife, I don't know if she even remembers it, but it was basically a put up or shut up kind of conversation. And I said, okay. So I tried to find an office that would allow me to introduce the things that I was thinking and the things that I was hoping for. And vice chairman happened to come open. It was time to reelect the vice chairman. Perry Buck was holding the office at that particular time. And later on in the race, she would exit out to help Ken. And we've actually been, Perry Ken and I have been very good friends since then. But I saw that opportunity and I said, okay, this gives you an opportunity to speak to issues, to speak to principle, which is very near and dear to my heart. It's not just about party affiliation with me. It really is about principle. You have to believe in something. You have to stand for something. What's that saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll lay down for anything. Well, that's not me. And I wanted to find a group of people that believed what I believed. And I thought that was a place to do it. It was a very interesting race. And I remember how deeply this thing goes when we talk about what they call us. I had several letters, old school, had several letters that I had written out my plans and what I wanted to do. And I had one addressed and stamped to every member of the Central Committee, the State Central Committee. And the first one I mailed was to the then chairman, Dick Wadhams. And I wanted to see how much it would cost, to great big old envelope and whatnot. How much is it going to cost to mail this? So I took the one to Dick Wadhams and I put it up there and I asked the attendant, who happened to be a Black man, how much will it cost me to mail this? And he looks and he's, you have no idea what I want to do with this letter. That's what the mail clerk said to me. I said, well, hopefully you want to tell me how much it costs so I can mail it. He says, Dick Wadhams, you're a Republican? I said, yes, I'm running for vice chairman. He says, what? I said, I'd like to return my party to, and I never got to finish. He says, to what? The days of Lincoln? Because that's the last time Republicans were ever good to Black people. And this is just mailing a letter. That's all I was trying to do. So I thanked him and paid the postage on all of them, bought the stamps. And then I was really afraid. Well, is he gonna deliver them? Will they get the message before a Central Committee meeting? Apparently he did, as I got some replies, and it worked. It was tough balloting. There was 3 ballots. It went down to 3 ballots, but in the end, the Central Committee elected me to serve as vice chairman back in 2009. It was a great honor, and I found out at the time I was the first Black man to hold that post in this state, and it was quite an honor to at the time hold that distinction with Athena Eisenman, who was the first Black person ever as a woman to be vice chairman of Colorado State Party, and she was a predecessor of mine as president of the Black Republicans of Colorado as well. So it was a great honor to serve. A lot of fun.
Amazing. I've seen a couple of your speeches online, and you're incredibly inspiring and knowledgeable and concise. So thank you for serving again. I want to kind of get into some more meaty conversations. One of the things that we hear is that there was a big switch in 1964, because prior to the Civil Rights Act, Blacks were Republicans because the Republican Party was the party of freeing the slaves. It was the party of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. So fast forward to 1964, and President Johnson passes the Civil Rights Act, and then everybody, quote unquote, everybody switches to the Democrat Party. So this is kind of a mystery. Can you let's just have a conversation about the supposed switch that happened in the 60s.
The switch. I'm sure some people did switch, but it's interesting because you go back and you can take the snapshot of that year, 1964, and think of what was going on. And to a great degree, not unlike our country today, there are some of the same things. There people are still fighting and trying to stand up for recognition and to be heard and to be treated with the dignity and respect deserving of all citizens. But you go back and there's just this interesting thing, silly factoids from history, like how many Republicans owned slaves? Well, we can't really find any. There may have been some, I'm sure there must have been, right? You look at who passed the Fugitive Slave Acts, who opposed anti-lynching laws, who delayed women's suffrage for 20 years as a party. And, who opposed the 1957 Civil Rights Act? Who opposed Civil Rights Act in the 1860s? Who opposed suffrage, freeing the slaves? That's one party, and it's not Republican. So magically, the same party that not only produced Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation for some Black people, but then 13th, 14th Amendments freed forever slaves. And then the 15th Amendment gave Black men suffrage at the time. I mean, those are significant things. Everybody who probably listening to us has driven on Colfax Avenue. But do you know it's named for Schuyler Colfax, that Republican Speaker of the House, who made sure that his name was called so that he could vote for the emancipation, the true emancipation there in the constitutional amendments. So all those Republicans, all those things, Jefferson Davis, president of the the Confederacy, senator from Mississippi, he is replaced by the Republicans with a Black man in the United States Senate back in the 1800s. And from the South, there's only been one more Black man elected, and that's Senator Tim Scott, who is currently serving. So look at that gap. He is also a Republican, by the way. So we get to 1964, of people in the country, President Kennedy, I mean, you've got Malcolm X and Medgar Evers have been murdered. President Kennedy has been murdered. Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy, soon enough. Now you have the president, LBJ, from Texas. And the Civil Rights Act comes before him and he signs it. And everybody's like, great, it's LBJ. He had to work to get that passed. He himself, the president, had to work to get that passed. What people don't realize is his party controlled the levers of government, especially in the Senate. Check out the numbers. 100 US senators. The Democrats had a supermajority. They had 60 odd in the neighborhood. I think it's 67 senators. So they didn't need a single Republican to pass the Civil Rights Act. Now remember, everybody switched, right? The Democrats didn't need a single Republican to pass the Civil Rights Act, but only 46% of them, or only 21 of them voted for it. The other 46.
Pause. Okay, pause. We need to put a spotlight on this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a majority of Democrats in the Senate. Supermajority. President Johnson did not need a single Republican vote in order for the Civil Rights Act to pass, but there were not enough Democrats. Only 21 of those 67 voted for the Civil Rights Act. So how do you pass the Civil Rights Act? You can't pass that with only 21 people. So what happened? Please continue.
So the Republicans had a higher percentage. In their minority, they had 27 vote for it. So you had the 48, and that kind of swelled it, pushed it over. The Republicans, much greater percentage voted for that. So my question when we talk about the switch is, did the switch happen before or after the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Before or after the Voter Rights Act, which numbers are a lot closer, but you have a similar thing where Republicans are carrying the day. Did the switch happen before or after that? Did the switch happen after? Because Strom Thurmond, he gets a lot of guff for having been a Dixiecrat. And at the time, I think that's correct. But this is 1948. This is 1964. So when did the switch actually occur? It's interesting. So let's just say that this happened in 1964, 65. There was some monumental switch to where the Republicans are now the old Democrats, Jim Crow, slavery, the dogs, the hoses, Bull Connor and whatnot. Let's say that switch happens. So then explain the 70s when the Philadelphia Papers are written by a Black Republican by the name of Dr. Arthur Fletcher, God rest him. And they become affirmative action that's signed by, wait, who was that? Richard Nixon, who was a Republican, right? So you have a Black Republican in Nixon's administration who writes these things, right? And Nixon signs them into law and gets them passed. Now, was he a Democrat that was switching over to Republicans, or was he just a Republican all along? So do the Democrats who claim this switch, do you claim Richard Nixon? I think not. Side note in history, the first time Martin Luther King goes to the White House is under the Eisenhower administration, and he meets Vice President, yes, it's Richard Nixon that receives him first time at the White House. So when did this switch happen? When did this monumental thing that the Democrats only always help the Black community? When did that happen? I don't know. Historically, I don't see it. I'm an analyst by nature and some degree by training. I just don't see the line. And I also don't think it matters. I think the line is invented. I think it's something to hold on to. It's something to justify my not leaping, getting out of the box, doing something differently. I need something to blame, so here it is. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't, we talked about principle, it doesn't matter party or not. It's about principle. It's about what you believe. If you believe, as I did on that farm in Arizona, and we were taught that we may be poor, but with hard work and effort, we can, in opportunity, and that's the big thing, we can move ahead. But you have to make your own opportunity as well. I was taught that by those 3 grand ladies that I mentioned earlier. And you have to take those opportunities, and you have to be willing to risk. Risk means failure. Probably the two biggest fallacies is that the Constitution guarantees Americans cheap gas. You hear about every election cycle, how much gas costs, and it guarantees you success. It guarantees neither. Guarantees neither. It's not American to only want success, because you don't learn anything. How many times did Hershey go bankrupt before the Hershey bar is ubiquitous, and that particular brand of chocolate is ubiquitous? Look at what Henry Ford has done with the assembly line, on. And Black entrepreneurs, Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, there's no limit to what we'll do if we're willing to risk. We extend out in faith. We're God-loving people. We extend out in faith, and we run those chances. And when we fail, we get up and do it again. That too is Republican. And I think that too is Democratic, because that's a people thing, and that's where we really have to get back to. So there's my thought on the switch.
So somewhere along the way, it has become taboo to be Black and say that you're a Republican. Okay?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of the names that we are called.
So
you want to start? We want to go back and forth, like you name one and I name one?
But we do need to put a disclaimer. We've got one disclaimer. Yes. If you have small children around or adults with delicate sensibilities, now would be a good time to walk away. After you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to start with an easy, like PG one. Sellout. Sellout.
I love that one. I love that one. My question to that is, if I've sold out because I believe these things about government, what have you bought into? Another one is handkerchief headed. You know, you have your head, your head wrapped in a scarf, and you got it kind of down in the field. Yes, sir, boss. Anything you need, boss. That's handkerchief headed. Okay. Been called that one.
All right. Coon.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing about that one is that we get that from outside and inside of the race, unfortunately. Coon is one. Step and fetch it. That's another one that really gets on my nerves. Whatever you say, boss, I'll step it, I'll do it for you.
Woo. Okay, things are heating up. House Negro.
I would only correct that to make it what it actually is. No one's ever called me a house Negro. They've called me a house nigger. And if the censors censor that, so be it. But that's what it is. It is ugly and it's raw. We are accused of cuddling up to master, as if we had a master in the United States. So I guess that'll be my turn. What's the other one? Whitewashed.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Let's see. I'm trying to, what have I missed? Let's see. There's a lot.
Yes. Oreo.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Steele, when he was running for the Senate as Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, they were throwing Oreos at the man. Trying to be white, trying to pass.
Being black on the outside, white on the inside. Everybody, I think, knows what an Oreo looks like.
Absolutely. In fact, I made a joke with Michael Steele during that time. I said, "You're lucky. If you're Asian, they would call you coconuts, and imagine what they'd be throwing there." Because I'm thinking that would hurt a lot more than Oreo. So you got to chuckle out of that, as I remember. Any sort of thing to dehumanize a Black Republican. You know, the only Black people that you can get away with saying bad things about are Black Republicans. For example, I won't mention her name, but a very famous politician was clapping back at something that then Secretary of State Colin Powell said. And she said, "You've got people speaking with the master's voice, and you know what I'm talking about." I was like, that's interesting. And speaking of General Powell, he wasn't considered a great man by some until he endorsed President Obama. I first joined the Army before the Navy, Army Reserves. I am, and always have been since I was 17 years old, an admirer of Colin Powell. I love the man, I support him, and I've always thought the world of him. How he came up and he earned his stars and the things that he put up with as a full colonel. I think in one of the books said he was called a boy and all this other kind of stuff. That's the other one, house boy, house girl, called all manner of names. And he persevered and he worked hard and he believed in what he believed. And he became the senior military official in the United States. That is incredible. But he was a sellout. He was a step and fetcher. You know,
we have a lot of Black Republicans that have held some of the highest offices, like Condoleezza Rice, was also Secretary of State.
National Security Advisor.
Dr. Carson, who is Secretary of HUD. We have the Surgeon General.
Yep.
I don't want to get saying his name right. Is it Johnson? I can't. Sorry, I don't want to offend anybody out there.
Shamefully, Surgeon Generals, they wear the Navy uniform.
The Surgeon General is Black. I know. I've only heard him talk a couple of times right during the middle of COVID. And so, but we have had Black Republicans in some of the highest offices in our country. And I can't think of a Black Democrat who has been our Secretary of State.
Well, and the argument will be that we've had a Black president. Well, this is very true. We've had one. We've had one. But how many more people are qualified to seek that office and to have it? We've got to, the big thing is we got to tearing each other down from the inside. You know, we are notorious for that. My issue and my concern with the Black Republican is that automatically it's open season. Anybody can get away with saying anything to you. I was you're talking about the vice chairman's race. I went to Arapahoe County headquarters and I couldn't work the phones. I dropped off some food and drinks and stuff like that for the people who could. It was like the 96-hour push. And I was coming out of the elevator And this woman, she happened to be Caucasian. She looked at me and she looked at where I came out of, and she looked back. She says, "You're Black." This is no hello, nothing. "You're Black. What are you doing in there?" "I'm a Republican." "Why are you a Republican?" I'm like, "Because what I think about government and the way it should work is that you shouldn't be a Republican. They haven't done anything for Black people. They hate Black people. What's the matter with you?" This whole litany. I still don't know this person's name. She doesn't know my name. I haven't seen her since. But to feel so free as to, oh, Black Republican, I can come unglued. She wouldn't have done that to any other Black person. Had there not been a Republican Party headquarters banner behind my head, she wouldn't have spoken to me, most likely. So that's what it is. That's just what we put up with and deal with. But let's be honest, Priscilla, we get it from both sides. I'm not, I call them like I see it. So we have on both sides skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
You're too red to be Black. And because you're Black, are you totally red?
Yeah.
I was informed by a gentleman, and I use the term loosely, right after being elected. I was leaving the hall from being elected vice chairman at the end of the day. And he made a point to stop me, look me in the face and say, shook his head, "All right, but if you don't do a good job," and he points his finger in my chest, "Central Committee will never elect another Black vice chairman." I'm like, really? Going in, I was asked who I voted for, Barack Obama, John McCain. Well, I'm a Republican. I tend to vote Republican a lot, right? So it's both sides. We do get it from both sides. Not all Republicans, no, but we do get it. It does exist. We are free, but we don't have the latitude that everyone else seems to have. So that is another tragedy. But we were built to last. We're strong enough. We can take it.
I need to redeem myself real quick. It's not Johnson. It's Jerome. It's Jerome. Sorry, Jerome. You're doing a great job. Okay. Who
My
is our
apologies,
Surgeon General? My apologies to Surgeon General Jerome, not Surgeon General Johnson. Okay. But you're right. I think that somewhere along the way, there's been this great skepticism of associating our skin color, kind of like Joe Biden. You ain't Black if you don't vote for me, right? The assumption that all Black people owe him our vote simply because we're being Black. And I think there's so few vocal Black conservatives in, that when someone meets us, it's hard for them to believe. But that's changing. That's definitely changing with Blacks for Trump, with more and more conservative Blacks running for offices locally. I ran for an office, and I think I learned a lot about what the perception is and how people need more time to adjust. And more Black people in the community need to start talking about and reviewing past policies. So now I want to talk about some of the policies that have hurt the Black community. I will start with one, redlining, where, in the housing market, Black people were kept from buying properties in certain places because it was planned to keep us out. Let's keep talking. What else do you have?
Well, that's the short name for that is called racism. And the long name for it is wrong. The other things, I am not a fan of private prisons. As an American capitalist, if I have a business, it's my duty to lobby, to influence policymakers and things to try and get that business to grow. But when my business is incarceration of human beings, and at a fairly high percentage Black people, I have to question that. And so as conservative as I am, and this is going to raise a lot of hackles, I'm okay with that. This is America. I get my own opinion. I think that's wrong. It shouldn't be there. The state itself, whether it's the federal state, the state, or the county, should be maintaining its own prisons. We should not be privatizing punishment. I think that is a ridiculous notion. And you say, well, it's overcrowding and the state can't afford it. Then it must review its policies, like the 1994 Omnibus Crime Bill, with the 3 strikes you're out and things of that nature. Maybe our policies are wrong. So those are the 2 things, I guess, that particular bill and private prisons. Sure, build them privately, but to staff them, there's something inherently wrong with that, in my opinion. Always has been.
That the 1994 crime bill, but that was Biden's bill, wasn't it? I believe that was.
I don't know if he was a principal author or a sponsor.
I know that bill is connected to the school to prison pipeline, that conversation around the school to prison pipeline that inequitably, puts more Blacks in jail. So yeah, crime bills. I'm going to go there as a woman. I'm going to speak up about abortion and genocide and this policy that 6 out of 10 women who have an abortion are Black women. And the fact that in New York City, I believe it was 2017, I believe that was a year where more Black babies were aborted than were born. And that's a tragedy for our community. Because somewhere I read that our Black population would be double or even triple what it is now had we not aborted so many of our Black babies. And so that's a big policy issue that's controversial, but you can't deny the data and how it's impacted our community.
True. I mean, it is. You look at any of these issues, and they call them that because they're emotional. You cannot not feel one way or the other. And in most of these, whether abortion or incarceration or racism, you can help feel whatever it is you feel very deeply. And that's the problem. That's actually part of the problem. We must be principled and governed by principle, but the governing has to be done by reason. One of my favorite quotes, I believe, from Aristotle is that reason devoid of passion is the law. Reason devoid of passion is the law. And think about that, whether it's at the debate, which I, in full disclosure, saw about 25 seconds of, whether it's the debate or debates in the past, or trials or committee meetings. The last time we have seen debates based on reason, based on logic, based on facts, devoid of emotion. Every senator, every House member, and I do paint with a broad brush. My apologies to those of you who aren't doing this. But what you really want to do is you want to be seen on television. You want to be seen with that great quip, that great comeback, that great quote, so you can drive coffers to get yourself reelected, just to get yourself reelected. It's not about the debate anymore. It's not about Federalist Paper number 10, things, everybody says mob rule, but if you read it, it's really talking about the country divided into parties and divided into factions, and how the law must be for the common good, which is a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas. Law must be an ordinance of reason, and it must be for the common good. And that comes directly from our constitutional users manual, the Federalist Papers, which aren't taught anymore at any level that I can see. And you go there with the policies, and it's sad because now people don't know what to expect from the government. So another one, a policy that I believe is destructive ultimately, and people are going to be mad and call me all sorts of names for this, but it's universal healthcare, really is. The reason it's destructive is, one, you can't pay for it. Two, you can't define it. And three, the only way to implement it is for the federal government, emphasis on federal government, to act as a national government and to impose same things on Rhode Island and Nebraska and Texas as it does Massachusetts and everywhere else. And that doesn't fit. It's the reason we have state governments. There is no authority for universal health care at the federal level. Could the federal government decide to assist states? Could it decide to give money and set asides and things of that nature to assist states to establish these? I believe that is correct. But to administrate it itself, I don't find it. And I can already hear everyone saying, but the Supreme Court is against you. So there, buddy. What the Supreme Court decided was that Congress has the power to tax. That was the turning point for Chief Justice Roberts in June of 2012, was that Congress had the power to tax under Article 1, Section 8. And that is true. But when universal health care was rolled out to the American people, it was a penalty. It wasn't a tax. Well, when it was brought before the Supreme Court, it was a tax because all lawyers knew, including the one at the White House at the time, that the Supreme Court doesn't have the authority to really fight Congress over taxes. They have broad powers. And that's why it was done that way. If it were done correctly in the light of day, without a 2,200-page manager's amendment that superseded all the rest of it on Christmas Eve at night, no less, had it been done in the light of day, it would have been undone by logic, by reason. And we could have found a way to help people. America is about helping. America is about the less fortunate. That's not just for the rest of the world. Every time somebody in the world needs rescuing, we're right over there. Our blood, our time, our talent, our treasure. What about the people in the United States? We don't have to go to Africa to find poverty and hunger. We can find that right up the street here in Denver. We have to have policies that infill, that take care of the American people. And we can do it the right way if we take out the sting of emotion, if we go by reason, if we look at what it is government is supposed to be doing, and the citizens insist that that job is done. Don't give me what makes me happy. Give me good government. Do your job. Don't try to get reelected. Try to get the laws right. It's just insane to me. So as a policy that bothers me, the policy of overreach really bothers me. And that happens on both sides. Government should not be overreaching.
So another policy that's impacted the Black community is welfare. On paper, conceptually, it looks good, but we've had enough time to see the impact on the Black community and the Black family over a couple of decades, 3 or 4 decades. So what we're seeing are more Black fathers outside of the home, because the incentive has been for single moms to make more money from the handout than they would make if the father was in the home. There's more of an incentive for the mother not to be married to the father of her children because the government will give you money. And I think a lot of people don't understand that that has been the result of welfare. And this is not a judgment on Black women, on poor women, or men. It's just, I mean, it's human nature. If you know you're going to get a paycheck and you don't have to be married to the father of your children, you know, there are men I know who want to be with the woman they love and their children, but there is no incentive. You know, and I think it's a terrible system to put the Black community in, because our children need their fathers. Our children need a stable home. I'm a teacher. I see this. I see the impact of broken families. And I get very passionate about our community when I see that, you know, a lot of our Black brothers and sisters are having to make these very difficult decisions about finances at the sacrifice of their families. So talk about it.
it goes back to my mother and grandmothers. Full disclosure, I am a two-time veteran of welfare, 2 times. We talked about hard work and self-determination. It's not just pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. This is where conservatives get into trouble. It's not just that. It's about the opportunity. Now let's look at the welfare policy. So it's more than just being incentivized. If I am struggling, right, whatever happens, I'm on welfare, I get this government support. I can't have a job. I get the slightest job and the benefits go away. So if I want to work, and the only job I can get is a job that doesn't pay a lot right now, but I want to work because of the dignity of work, and I go do it and I try to save, I lose all the benefits. I'm not taking care of my family. It's not just incentivizing, it's systemizing poverty. And then at the end, we get to be grateful to the people who've provided this to us, because at least we have this. This is America. There is no at least we have in America. We have the ability, when we're given that opportunity, that break to make something of ourselves, we always do. The Black community is among the most resilient, vibrant, strong communities there are. We've been here for over 400 years and it has not been an easy ride, yet here we stand. Here we stand. We're able to do this, and we're better when we're together. So when these policies break up families, fathers in prison for inordinate amounts of time, fathers not in the home, because it would cause more poverty to have a father in the home working, we really have to look at what these policies are. So why can't we change them? These are things that people should be doing instead of trying to get reelected. Why don't we fix these policies? Why don't we say that at this much money, yes, you can have a job. And as you get on your feet, we'll bring it back by percentage. We'll bring that back by percentage, because what we really want in welfare, we want welfare to work itself into non-existence, into extinction. We want to get everybody that needs to go on it, through it, and off, paying taxes, getting a higher job, taking care of families, being together, building the building block of society, which is when you flip that dollar bill over and you see that pyramid is incomplete. Those are people. Each one of those stones, it's one of us. It's our family. If we're intentionally, as a government, putting cracks in the foundation, America's going to fall one day. We have to be willing to do the hard jobs, to build the families. This is going to take national courage on an individual level. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, whatever. These policies have to change so that we can help transition people from poverty into prosperity, instead of keeping them moderately comfortable in poverty and devising the thing that most of the people on welfare that I've ever known, like I said, a 2-time vet, want to work, want that dignity, do believe in it, just don't have the opportunity because of the detrimental policies. We can adjust that so that people, because we forget, people can build a greater society.
So we've talked about redlining, we've talked about healthcare, we talked about criminal justice, we've talked about welfare. My favorite topic, education, because this is a field that you're in, that I'm in. And we look at the data, and the data is dismal. We are graduating kids all across America who are not proficient in literacy and math, and other subjects like social studies and understanding civics and history and all of the things that we value in an education system. I love education with a passion.
Clearly.
I love having this conversation, but let's talk about how our current education system has impacted our children. What are some of the solutions that you see that we need to take a look at?
Well, I'm passionate about it as well. It starts at the root. I'm a root guy. I'm a root word guy, and education, from the Latin educare. We tend to think that education is what you put in somebody's head. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th. I mean, we think of what it goes in, but the truth in Latin, that word doesn't mean what to put in. It means to draw out, to draw out. And if you really think about that in a wider context, think about, and I'm a staunch creationist. Yes, I'm a Christian, believe it or not. I'm conservative and a Christian. It happens. But if we look at the word education, it's to draw out. To draw out what? To draw out the talents, the abilities, the God-given vocation, the calling, the gifts that each individual has. That's what education is for. It's to help children, adults, and everybody learn to think properly, learn to put things in perspective, learn to use logic and reason. It's just not facts and figures and numbers and dates. And that's where we've gone wrong. Our educational system, from the whole thing with bells, structured and break this, that, the other, we've been trying to produce factory workers. That's what we've done with public education, try to produce factory workers, which, hey, it was good for the economy at one point, but we don't have an industrial base anymore. So now what do we got to do? Now what do we got to do? We have to have people who can think outside of the box. Think about all the entrepreneurs and everything. There are people who saw things differently, which is what you do as a Black Republican. It's kind of on the other side. But our education system, we have to look at not throwing money at it, but what makes an education worthwhile? What makes it, and you said it great in your race, was talking about, does this lead to a job, basically, sort of paraphrasing. Does it lead to a job? Can you do something with this? What are we pulling out of the children? And I say nothing. I think we're putting in emptiness with facts and figures. That's why kids get bored with school. It's like, what good is any of this? And you know what? No one can answer that. Every time you have a student says, well, what good is any of this? We have to start with, maybe later this will be important because, but we don't know that. So that tells me, and having done a little bit of subbing here and there and really working in religious ed, that I haven't pulled out what that kid, that person, what that person has inside of them. Haven't piqued that interest. I haven't pulled it out so that you can apply this new knowledge set to that job that you were given from the Creator. That's what I think we need to do with education. And a couple of things, federally, I'm appalled. Something I can't reconcile in my mind. And the people are going to say, oh, of course, you're a Republican. The Department of Education, was that $70 billion? But they don't run a single school. So I don't understand how to reconcile that. $70 billion, I think, a year, every other year, and you don't run a single school, not one. So why are you there? I think we could do things like we could make this into basically a scholarship fund. We could have this department, for a lot less money, research. What are the trends? What are the new things in education? Where are we lacking? What are the zones where we need engineers, where we need doctors? How do we get the skills in the elementary schools and the middle schools and junior highs and high schools that we need to fuel this economy, to get the complete citizen, to get the complete society? How do we translate that into things that people can use to support themselves later? I think that's what the Department of Education really needs to be. If I were president, I would reform that first, because that's what's going to have the lasting impact on society. What's in your mind, what's on your heart, that's what your country becomes. That's why the founders left us something great, and we're on the verge of decline, to put it nicely, in my opinion. Sorry about that. There's my filibuster.
It's all right. I mean, let's turn it to something positive. What are some of the positive policies during this current administration, during the Trump administration, that have helped the Black community? I will throw out there the opportunity zones. You talked about Senator Tim Scott, who's co-authoring that bill. As a Republican, I had an opportunity to be a part of a roundtable discussion with him here in Denver, and it was fascinating. There were several leaders around the table learning about investments. It I was talking to my friend Kay Carl, who is author of Frederick Douglass Republicans, and he said, Priscilla, the opportunity zones are our 40 acres and a mule plus interest. So you better get yours. So I'm telling everybody, go research opportunity zones. It is changing lives in the Black community all over the US and helping to stimulate our economy. But I have a lot in my mind. Why don't you go next and identify something positive that the current administration has done?
Simple. We talking about money for the HBCUs. I mean, how you can't put it, there's nothing else to put on it. Support for the institutions that are famous for producing and shaping and educating and pulling out Black minds.
I mean, not only did President Trump increase funding to HBCUs, but he made the funding permanent for 10 years. Because what people don't understand is, like, every year since the beginning of whenever they started going to the White House asking for funding, every year the presidents have to go and ask for funding and beg the president, the sitting president, for money every year. So the first year they went to Trump, he gave them the money. Second year they went to Trump, they gave the third year. He's like, now wait a minute, why are y'all coming back to me every year? And then he's like, well, this is silly. I'm just going to fund y'all for the next 10 years. So you don't have to come back and beg for money. This is the only president, the first president to guarantee funding to HBCUs and to give them more than the past administrations. I mean, that's incredible.
It is. And I like the fact that it was done kind of without being known.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks to motive. Really does. I think that's a great thing. I'm a favor of the current tax situation, the tax reduction. I believe that puts more, I don't believe, I know it puts more money in Black families' pockets. It allows you to do things like pay tuition, send your children to a better school, or any number of things, the things that you need with a better neighborhood house. It puts money where it should be, going back to the Republican thing, government doing less. Government should be taking less if it's doing less. That money is not the government, it is ours. It should be in our pockets, and the government should have to ask for it. But the 16th Amendment says differently, another story. But the tax policies are incredible as well.
So now my turn. Okay, education is controversial. Education is always controversial. But the DC scholarships, Washington, DC scholarships that were funded to help Black families and poor families to be able to go to a school of their choice. And so it was funded by Obama, then it was defunded by Obama, and the Black community was like, we need this for our kids. I mean, there are films and stories about Black mothers, single Black mothers, desperate to save their Black sons from situations where they couldn't learn, and so President Trump reinstituted, I believe it was $85 million for scholarships for students in DC to be able to go to a school. And I think that's incredible because it serves we talk about the community and the citizens and what people are saying that they need. And I think it's important for us, especially in the realm of education, not only that we fully fund, right? We want to fully fund public education. I'm definitely pro public education, but you can't deny, you can't deny that there's a place, there's a lid for every pot. Let's just put it that way. There are some kids and families where a specific private school works for them, or an innovation school, or a charter school. And I know some people don't like to talk about that, but there's no possible way for us to be able to reach the diversity needs of the American people by a one size fits all. I mean, we have choices for universities. We have choices. I mean, I don't understand how we're so pro-choice for college education, but when it comes to a K-12 education or ECE, that we want to dictate, what's best for a parent. I think parents need to have more voice in their child.
I do too. I am about educational choice at all levels. I'm a Catholic, and so part of my promise at my children's baptism was to use parochial schools because they reinforce what I teach at home. So that's my reason for it. Whether or not you get into the education argument or not, for me, I expect character to be developed in a certain manner. And these schools have it. And that's why my children go there, because that's my faith. If I didn't believe in it, I shouldn't be doing it, you know? So, but educational choice, you definitely have to have parents in control. Why is it that when it comes to education, parents can't be in control, but when the child acts out, parents are to blame? Why is it that the parents are always getting the responsibility, but never the right? And why is that the government's decision again? I don't know. I guess that's why I'm a Republican. I don't know what echelon of the government gets the right to make that decision for me as a parent. I don't know that I will ever understand or cede that right to some bureaucracy down the street. That is not a reasonable thing to do to me. That you get to determine how well my children learn how to read. You get to determine where the resources are that my taxes go to provide. My taxes come to you so you can tell me where I can spend and how much I can spend on my own children's education. There's something un-American about that. There's something fundamentally wrong. One of the great civil rights is education. We talk about civil rights, being able to drink out of the same water fountain, being able to walk down certain streets, and we all get that. But without an education, I don't know that I've been freed. I don't know that I can drink out of that fountain. I don't know that I can walk down that street or live in that house or buy this type of car. Without an education, all the other rights, who cares? You're never going to know about it. If I can't read the First Amendment. I don't know that I can go to church without persecution, allegedly anyways. If I can't read the Fourth Amendment, I don't know about privacy. It's implied. It's not even in the Constitution. It's implied. If I can't read and I can't reason and I can't think because I have a poor education, my rights are lost to me. They're gibberish. They mean nothing. And that's exactly how the American people are being treated by our servants, our lawmakers. Most of them are lawyers. They've read these things inside and out. They've added lawyers speak to it. But it's interesting, there are only 6 articles in the Constitution. Yes, there are 7. But the 7th became inert once the other 6 were ratified. They're all about how to ratify the Constitution. There are 6 active articles of the Constitution. It's not that long. But if I can't read, it's the worst thing in the world. How would I know? It's a biblical reference. The book of Acts, chapter 8, verses 30 and 31. The St. Philip and the eunuch. Do you understand what you're reading? And the eunuch replies, how can I? There's no one to teach me. That's exactly where we are. Parents should decide, teachers. Parents should decide. Government, as a function of helping to build society, can assist, but parents should hold sway and hold court in that. That's my thing on education.
Well, and this is why I am a Republican, because I am a constitutionalist. I'm actually a Frederick Douglass Republican, another segment for another time. But the Constitution is what we need to protect and we need to stand upon, because that's going to give us our freedoms. One more thing I thought about is criminal justice reform during this with President Trump that freed many people. We've seen testimonies of people released from prison for like petty things like drugs and things like that over like 20 years or more. And I think it's amazing that we have a president who recognizes the need to reform the criminal justice system and sees that there has been some inequities in the system.
Definitely, and it starts with perception. Again, this is another one of those things it'll take individual courage on a national level, because if criminal, thug, thief, rapist, everybody who heard me mention these, we all got mental pictures, right? We all get mental pictures. I've walked down streets as a grown man in the 2000s, in the last few years, and have had people cross the street. There was just around the corner from my house, there was a car with its hazard lights on. An older woman, happened to be Caucasian, looked like she was having some troubles. Car was in the middle of the street. I parked ahead. I kind of hurried back, and she instantly sped away. Parking lights still going and everything. It's like, my goodness, what's the deal? We have a perception issue. And you talked about people who've been freed for petty crimes and long dwell prison sentences. That goes back to Reconstruction of the South. Our modern policing model is based on the night patrols of the Klan. Now, I am not saying all policemen are bad, all policemen are Klansmen, any kind of nonsense like that. I have family who are cops. This is an individual thing. But what I'm saying is that the model that's laid out is based on the night patrols of the Klan. It just is. And a lot of these images and ideas about policing, about how you deal with different people as a function of being human, that is still there. It's still hanging like those Chads back in 2000. That perception is still hanging, and we still suffer from it, and we're still seeing the effects. We have to fundamentally change how we look at people. People have to be people. They can't be Black people. And we're talking about Black conservatives and the things that we go through and the things that they say about us. What we're really trying to say is that we're just people like everybody else. Here's a different perspective that you might not have thought of, but don't categorize me or anybody else automatically as a criminal because of the way I look. You don't know who I am. You don't know how I feel and what I think, even if I'm supporting you. So we have to stop really judging.
Well,
that's it.
I could talk about this. We have talked about this many times, but I'm going to wind us down. It takes a lot of courage to be a Black conservative. There's very few places I can go, whether it be on social media or in my workplace, where I don't receive a tremendous amount of hatred because I have conservative views. But I'm tough. My father raised me to be tough. And I'm very, very secure in my viewpoints. And that doesn't mean I make other people wrong, but other people try to make me wrong, right? And I know you've faced that because, just being a Black conservative or having conservative views or speaking out against, swimming against the flow of the stream will cause people to be very, very aggressive towards you and call you all kinds of names and make all kinds of assumptions. So it's not easy for Black people to be public with their conservatism, and especially this young generation. So what advice would you give to someone in the Black community who truly is a conservative or a Republican, but needs that little extra push to be more vocal and involved?
It's okay. The first thing is, it's okay. This is actually your country too, as much as it is anyone else's. You absolutely have a right and a need to bring a different viewpoint. What we have, what we believe in, is missing today. Civility, limits, restraint. I keep going back to that. There's so much that restraint would help. Things that I could do that I probably shouldn't, out of respect and staying in the due bounds with my fellow citizens, male, female, whatever, it doesn't matter. We lack restraint. And conservatism is bound in that, by playing by the rules, by working hard, by working with others, by helping others. That is what we need. So I would say to people who are in my shoes, who are in the shoes that I used to wear, my old pair of unsure conservatives, it's all right. You're good. Maintain, keep the faith, grow in your personal faith, and grow in education. Learn more about the government because you are the leaders. You're going to have to lead us back from the brink. That's what I would say.
Well, Leondray, thank you so much for your time. I know I kept you a little bit over and you're so patient, and I want you to go enjoy your time with your lovely family. And we're going to be continued. And thank you for being such an amazing mentor to me.
Oh, no, hardly.
God bless you. God
God
bless
bless.
America. Stay safe, all that good stuff. All right.
Indeed. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Take care.
Goodbye.